So let's make 2 lines 6 and 20. And then yeah. That's why I have a vacuum. You got 3 pairs.
Are we balanced in that?
It's covering everybody. So we're good. Yeah. Okay. So you guys can go ahead and turn it. So then,
What's the just sparring?
just light sparring, doing your best to emulate principles of swimming. You guys move down before that. Okay, ready to begin.
There we go.
Okay, stop. Good. And rotate. Okay. Then I'm gonna bow. You guys move up. I'm gonna screw around here. Go ahead. Begin.
Just using English. That news is
This doesn't matter if you won't bump that. Ooh. Point blue.
Oh, it's pretty-
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So round one. Shall we chat?
All good. So, that looked very nice. I thought I like the Roman armor. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Turn it up. How's that? Hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Yes. Yes. Was that a question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
everything's good. How that?
All right, cool. Okay, let's first talk about thrusts. I think every time somebody initiated an attack with a thrust, they got hit. Sometimes they hit the other person as well, but definitely got countercut pretty well every time. So if you're going to initiate an attack with a thrust, you can't kind of do it as an upward rising thrust to the body, because you just leave yourself too open. You need some form of opposition there. So, in an attempt to demonstrate, if one of you, I need 2 volunteers to be demonstration persons. Right, one of you is going to stand in an open fight. One of you is going to be an open, and the other one can be down in low ward. Okay, so obviously if the person in low ward just delivers a straight thrust to the body, they're going to get hit, yes?
Yeah.
Because there's no opposition there, there's nothing stopping him hitting you in the head. So if you want to thrust from there, let's see if I can find enough room to demonstrate. Okay, so from here with the high ward up there, you've really got to get the sword up to close that line so that they can't just countercut on you, or if they do, you can seed through Mount Tanta and hit them anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically thrust in a way that you're making narrow space on their sword. Yeah, and be ready for that countercut. Okay, so if open fight, you want to try and countercut at him? Probably, yes. That's it. Yes. That's it. Yeah. Okay, if they're in guardant, so defending person, go to true guardant. Go to guardant. No.
Oh,
That's it. So in that case, you're going to thrust basically in a high second. Yeah, high second. Yes, like that. Okay. Chances are they will parry it, and then you just roll through and hit them on the other side. Yeah. Okay, rather than thrusting on the outside of the sword, thrust on the inside of the sword at the face. So you want your sword between their sword and you. Yes, like that. Yes, that's it. Got it. Yes. That's it. And even if they instead slip back and try and countercut, you've still got the chance to roll into guardant. So this time, guardant, slip back and countercut. That's it. So don't even parry, just pass back and countercut.
Me to pass back?
Yeah, you pass back and countercut. Don't try and parry it. Yeah, that kind of thing. Do it quicker before he gets contact. As soon as the thrust comes in, because this is what would normally happen, as soon as that thrust comes in, just step back and try and hit him. Yes. Okay. So the point is that in both those cases, if you thrust with opposition, you've got a much better chance of protecting yourself from the inevitable countercut. That make sense?
Yes.
So yeah, so the low thrusts are really finishing moves. You do that once you've parried and you're finishing him off. Don't open with them.
All right.
Okay, next thing. Let's talk about the timing of counterattacks from open, I mean. Okay, so as you guys are well aware, if you're both in open fight and one of you attacks, the other person slips back and counterattacks, and most of the time the two swords clash in the middle and nothing happens. Yes? And Silver admits that, okay? He says, if two men are skillful and fighting upon true times, then they can never attack just with each other. In other words, you can't hit the other person at exactly the same time they're hitting you, because if they're attacking in true times, their sword will be in the way, they will clash in the middle and nothing will happen. But there are other timings that you can use to make that countercut more effective. Yes? So first of all, there's the really gutsy one, which is, so the three timings we've got are first, before, just, and after. First is the attack, so we're not worrying about that. So we've got before, just, and after. So before means to hit them before they have completed their attack. Make sense? So in this case, you're both up in open fight, and the attacker starts to initiate the attack, and as you counterattack, you make a lunge with your left leg forward and a little bit left, straight at them, like that. And by coming forward a little bit, you kind of interrupt their timing. They aren't quite ready yet. They're still initiating their attack. They may not have even started moving their feet, and suddenly your counterattack is coming in at them.
Do your feet stay put, Paul?
No, you make a lunge forward. I tend to do that as a sort of left foot lunge forward and left.
Good.
Sort of pretty well directly into the line of the attack. And it gives you a nice solid grounded structure to withstand the impact. it can feel a little bit awkward because the left leg is forward while you're cutting across like that. So there's a bit of a hip twist in it. So turn your back foot. Turn your back foot up onto the ball of your foot as you do it. Full disclosure is this actually comes directly from the English longsword stuff, but it works just as well with single sword. So if you imagine, if you're doing it with long swords, as the attack comes in, I'm going bang, left foot attack directly into it with full opposition and full structure. So
Excellent for.
that's the, what's that?
Excellent defense for open fight.
Yeah, this is the defender from open fight, yeah. Okay, so that's the first way of doing it. Do you want to give that a go?
Shall we do this in the, try to make it happen in free sparring? Or should we do it as a drill?
Yeah, do it as a drill.
Okay.
Set us up then.
Okay, both of you are in open fight. Sword foot back, that's the way. Okay, so get into a distance where the attacker is about to make a good attack. And the defender, rather than slipping back, I'm going to get you to lunge forward and left with your left leg and hit them on the head with opposition. Parry and hit at the same time. Like that, yeah.
Okay. All right. Looking down. Move up, right? Move up.
Up to you.
Oh.
That's it. Good. That's nice.
So Paul, is the attacker meant to fly out afterwards again, or is it like just that far and that's good enough?
Well, hopefully the attacker is dead at this point. Yeah.
No, the other guy, the defender who was like,
Yes, the defender would yeah. Once you've hit him on the head, you would run away.
yay.
So
You guys move down. You guys move.
make some room. So stepping forward and left with the left leg, hit them, step out with the right leg and retreat.
You're right.
Okay.
Okay. So hopefully you get the idea that, you know, particularly, I'm going to say You guys were making much deeper, more committed attacks then than you were when you were sparring. Okay, but against your normal sort of attack where people are circling and sniping and keeping that sword moving, interrupting their timing by suddenly going, actually, I'm not going to slip back and countercut, I'm coming forward on a countercut, can really screw up the attacker's timing and give you a better chance of hitting them. Okay, it is gutsy because you're relying on the fact that that's the actual target and they're not swinging at your leg or the other side of your head. But even then, because you're coming forward and interrupting the timing, you've got a fairly good chance of hitting them before they've done any sort of redoubling or feinty type thing. Okay. Second timing you've got is just. And as I say, if you're both aiming at each other's heads, the swords will probably hit in the middle and nothing will happen. So the other option is not to aim at the head, but to aim at the arm. So as the blow comes in, rather than going at the head, what you can do is you have to go at this forearm. If you're taller than your opponent, usually come down on top of it. That, if it's low enough, means you get a nice cross on the arm there. Some people find that a little uncomfortable, and so you can actually do it with the back edge, rolling the sword that way into the forearm. Me personally, I tend to come straight down on top of the arm like that. So I'll just slip my feet together and cut straight down in line with the other person's shoulder. And you want to be ever so slightly behind their sword. So as they're, I'll get a second sword. It's really hard to demonstrate by yourself. But as their sword is coming down, you want to be cutting them. The attacking sword, defending sword. So you get down onto the arm just as their sword is descending. Does that make sense?
You're on the outside.
Sorry?
You're on the outside, right? You're at the defenders on the outside.
Usually, if that sword's coming in with a downright blow, I can't really get to the outside. So I've really got to stay on the inside. And the inside gives me opposition at worst if they slow their attack down and are trying to do something else. If it's a reverse blow, then you cut to the outside. And that's always just dropping in to a hanging guard like that. So it's probably worth doing both. So downright blow, slip back so it's going to miss, and either cut that way if you're taller, or that way if you feel it's more comfortable with the back edge. Oh yes, if you're shorter than your opponent, then you can simply countercut and forehand as it comes in. Just slip back and deliver a downright blow directly to the wrist. In all cases, the point is that you have slipped back, so they're going to miss. So even if you don't hit the arm, you're out of distance and it doesn't matter.
Well, otherwise you want to throw them against that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so do both downright and reverse, and the target this time is not their head. The idea is to hit them on the arm.
Right here.
That's it, good.
Monkey move. Frankie. Go. Monkey move. Move. Frank.
There we go.
Sure was acting like my dog, jealous.
Good.
Let me try that. No, against the, when were you doing this one?
For me, the under blow feels better on the outside. That's when they're throwing a reverse side.
Yes,
Or a outside blow.
correct. That's it.
So here.
The snipe underneath feels a lot better on the outside. For me, at least on the inside, doing that. That would feel it was just coming straight down.
Snipe on, show me again.
So the two ways he said you could snipe is just a straight downward blow on the inside. Yeah, just going for the arm, or you can just like we are on the outside, but doing it on the inside. It's more like a cut through.
Cut through.
Yeah. Like it. Okay, yeah. That's right.
Paul, this is the before.
This is just. So
is
in this
just.
case, you're doing just. You are getting out of distance, and just as their attack is coming in, you're taking the arm off.
Okay. That's faster. I'm gonna get-
So Paul, is the recording going to be available to everyone, or should I start taking notes?
I'm sure you can get a copy of the recording.
Awesome.
So does either of the other groups have any questions?
Alex was just asking if he can get a copy of the recording, and I said that should be fine. Okay, so you've got before where you actually step forward into the line of the attack and smash them before they're ready. You've got just where you can either countercut with opposition at the head, even though that usually ends in two swords clashing, or you get out of distance and target the arm instead, which has got a higher success rate. The last one is after, and this is the one that in drills looks the dodgiest, but in reality works a treat as long as you only use it sometimes. So basically the idea here is as the attack comes in, you slip it completely. You step back and get that away, left leg goes back and to the left, sword stays where it is, making sure you're out of distance and the attack swings by. After it's gone by, you step forward with your right foot and countercut directly to the head. So this is a duo tempi thing. It's a slip. Back and left with left foot, forward with the right foot. So the footwork is back and in. Back and in. And as the attack comes in, you go out of the way, watch it whistle by, then step forward and hit them on the head. Yes.
When we use the term, sorry, Bruce, sorry about that. When you use the term, hey, hi, good to see you. But when you use the term slip here, is that always withdrawing the front foot, or is it withdrawing the first? Is it reasonable to withdraw the back foot here? And second, the other piece of that is a slip always withdrawing the front foot in this context when we see it, especially in silver and English any English sources?
Certainly in the broadsword stuff, it's always the front foot. Like the slip has two meanings. One meaning is to dodge the blow, and the other meaning is to withdraw the front foot. Okay. In this case, you want to withdraw the front foot, assuming your left foot forward, because you want to move left as well.
Okay.
So this is probably worth talking about, and I can kind of demonstrate with paper and pens. All right, so. We'll hold this to the camera and hope that it works. So up the top, you've got the attacker. Down the bottom, you've got the defender, and you've got the arc in which the sword of the attacker can reach the defender, which is sort of a circle or an ellipse. Yes?
Yep.
So attacker's standing there, defender's standing there, the attacker's sword can cover that much space.
So just for reference purposes, wave your left hand because it sometimes flips. Okay, that's your left side. Okay.
This is my left side.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense then.
Okay.
Okay.
It's my time, but yeah. Kind of.
He's in Australia.
So in order to get out of distance, right? So here's the geometry. Okay. Any tangent off a circle is as good as any other tangent. Yes?
Yes.
So if defender moves backwards that way, they'll be safe, but they won't be able to hit the other person. Yes.
Yep.
If, however, as the attack comes in there, they step sideways in the direction the attack is coming. They're off the tangent of the circle, so they're safe. But they will still be in distance to hit the attacker. So as you end up with kind of two intersecting circles where the attacker, the defender is outside the attacker's range, but the attacker is still within the defender's range.
So this
The
is
point of all that is that if you're going to slip a blow, you move sideways in the direction that it is theoretically coming. So if it's attacking your left-hand side, you move back and left to about parallel. If it's coming the other side, right side, you step back and right to about parallel. Because that gets you off the tangent of the attack, but leaves you in range. So from here, left leg back, attack is coming in to hit me here. I step back and left and it will miss, but I will still be close enough to hit them.
Let's try it.
So let's give that a go. And remember, the timing of this, it's a duo tempi thing. Wait for the attack to whistle by before you step back in.
Yeah.
So.
Paul Wagner.
You were the spirit of one attack. Pardon? You were the spirit of one attack.
You got this week. No, you're good.
It smelled of smoke.
I'm great.
With your brother. Okay,
That's it.
just make the head leave that.
Here.
This is Page's slip and traverse, isn't it?
Actually, I did this a long time before I read Page. It's
Okay.
really just the standard slip.
Okay.
The geometry of slips is always the same. Whichever
Yeah.
side the attack is coming at, you step back in that direction. There is an interesting. Page also describes slipping while in the midst of traversing.
Yeah.
And because you're circling each other, you're always stepping back and left, regardless of which side the attack comes in, because you're doing it while you're circling.
Yeah.
And some of the later broadsword texts misunderstood what Page was saying and kind of repeated saying, actually, you know, if it's a reverse cut, you step back and away from it until it whistles through. And it's almost like they were just relying on the authority and didn't understand the geometry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they happen to be doing a reverse cut, you would step back and right to get out of the way of it.
Okay.
Because if you
Isn't
step,
that-
yeah,
Isn't that what Page is describing in that slip in that?
yes, that's
section?
what Page describes.
Okay. All right.
But
Yeah.
I was saying the later broadsword texts actually get it wrong
Okay.
because they misunderstood what Page was doing, which
Okay.
is just interesting aside.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you've got these different timings that you can use from an open fight. You can either interrupt their timing by actually coming a little bit forward, which is gutsy, but works. You can countercut just, which is you slip back, so you're just out of distance and either hit them on the head with opposition, Usually, if they're any good, the swords will clash. But you can also get a little further back and go for the arm instead. Or you can slip it in the traditional broadsword sense, and that you step back into the side, wait for it to whistle by, then hit them when it's safe. The other thing you can do from the other thing you can do from open fight is parry. And silver is very specific that you do not parry forehand from open. So if I'm here and the attacker's coming in and I try and parry like this, that's dangerous according to silver, because the other person can deceive that and hit me. So I've got like videos on YouTube about this, but the way I do it is if I see somebody slipping back and deliberately parrying forehand, like they're counter-cutting at my sword and not at me, I will deliberately cut through before they parry, roll it around with a figure eight and hit them on the other side. So if the person who is defending is always parrying by cutting at my sword, I will go cut through, avoid that parry, roll through and hit them. And that's worth practicing too, just so you get it right. So for this one, both of you are in open fight. The person who is defending, you are going to counter-cut at the sword into a sort of inside forehand board. Maya people will actually do this. Maya tells you to do this. So if you ever find a Maya person, this will allow you to kill them. Okay, so that's what the defender's doing. They're going to cut into the sword into an inside guard and parry it. And what the attacker is going to do is, once you've done that a few times, is we're going to deceive that. You're going to cut, deceive the parry, roll in through guard, and just roll through and hit them on the head around the other side of the parry. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. Yes, good, lovely.
So I'm gonna block it.
Yep.
You're gonna go,
Yeah.
Mark.
Right.
1, 2, 2, 4.
So like, he says he's going through it, like, so yeah, you're kind of cutting through, you're kind of throwing your fast, yeah, and then coming back around on the other side to cut out those. I think is. Yeah. Yeah, 'cause, yeah.
Eric's friend, you are correct. Yes,
There you go.
precisely that. That's it. Yeah. Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's dropped and you just roll the wrist over. Right.
So Paul, to save on your elbows when you're doing this, how much do you pull that sword in to go around the other side?
I think the trick is not to move your feet until you make the second attack. This is basically a feint.
Okay.
So
this is all done out of range until you come.
well, yeah, I've swung at him. I know he keeps parrying forehand. So this is feint, avoid, step with the real cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And other than that, I would pull my elbow in as much as I need to control the sword.
Yeah.
So Paul, would it be fair, like if they're parrying from garden, or from open fight or garden variable, parrying forehand, silver tells us not to do that. If we wanted to make this so both of us were doing good things by silver, is it fair for the person who's feeding to try and hit when they're trying to come in and hit, who's the person who would be parrying to instead try and hit using just and hit the arm, and the other person to try and roll around it with the same way?
Yes, you can. If somebody's countercutting at your arm, you can absolutely slip it.
Yeah.
By pulling the arm away.
Use the same thing.
Yes.
That way I'm practicing.
That's a lot trickier.
Yeah.
But yes, you can use the same technique to avoid a countercut to the arm.
Okay.
But they're going to be, because they're going to be slipping back, they'll be further away. So the chances of you then getting your redoublement in is less because they've got more time to respond. But yes, good question. Oh,
thank you.
All right. So parrying forehand from open is not such a good thing. You can be deceived. Silver does, however, say you can parry guardant from open. So if you do want to parry from open fight, what you want to do is, first of all, your footwork is going to be big triangle step out to the right. As the downright bow comes in that way, you've got to give yourself time by moving this way. And your sword is going to drop into an imbricata, and presenting that point usually gives the attacker a little bit of pause. Through into garden, as you step forward and right, that's about the time the blow will land, and then hit them as you make your triangle step. And the trick to this is really smoothness, okay? So you're doing your triangle step out to the right, rolling your sword through garden as a full moulinet, and it just happens to be there at the point that their sword will arrive, okay? So don't kind of hook it down into garden that way. If you're too slow, you'll hook their attack into you. And even if you get there in time, your sword is then moving in the same direction that their blade is coming in, and you can get hit by both. So it's got to be roll, oppose, and roll around as one smooth motion. One nice big moulinet. The nice thing about this is if you happen to be shorter than your opponent and you're having trouble getting countercuts in because they're just too far away, this allows you to get closer. So as you triangle step out to the right, you can actually come forwards a little bit in order to stay close in distance. So I hope that's clear enough. So the defender is going to go boom, parry, strike as the downright blow comes in. So have a go at that. I'm going to go and get myself a quick drink and be back in a sec.
Just a second, Paul, before,
Yes.
the imbricata, I didn't quite get that piece of it. That's part of this Molinet.
Yeah. So basically,
Here, and broccatas take.
Oh,
And that turns into.
yeah. So from there, dropping that point to there, you drop your hand into first, and it just happens to present the point to their face, and they think, oh, maybe he's doing a counter thrust as you do that roll. And if you think about it that way, it prevents you from doing this, because doing that is not going to work for you. If you think about going to imbricata, you'll automatically come in opposing the blow.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. I'll be back in just a sec.
Let me know when you need it.
Yeah, there's some alcoholic on the top. There's a 6-pack of non-alcoholic that aren't that great. There's that blue one on the 4 shelf down is non-alcoholic. It's pretty good. And then there's the sodas on the left side of that same shelf that the green one is.
What's that? I'm going.
That was pretty good. Alex, can you hear me? Okay. If your open fight is held Lugenstand style, you're not going to be able to do this because you can't get your point down. So your open fight has to be straight up in order to get that rotation. So if you're going to parry, you can't do it from there. You've got to do it basically from there so that you can drop that point down. Okay, so open fight basically straight up in order to do this, rather than back behind.
Okay.
Thank you for having my elbow
I was
out.
gonna say. I can't hear you. Slow. Going to go slow. Yeah. Okay.
Like it, it's really, it's pretty smooth, sweet, yeah. Just
Yeah.
oh, yeah, you check me. Reminds me of that long sword where it used to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
Very fast. Sorry. That's fast.
Okay.
Okay, good. How are you guys feeling? We've been going for an hour. Do you want 5 minutes?
Guys want some water?
Love some more.
Okay.
Okay, 5 minutes for refreshments.
Right.
Yeah. Mike, show me your sword. Nice. Where's that one from?
It was your advice. Is it a Daniele, perhaps?
Oh, Danelli. Yeah.
Daniele. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
They don't like it. They keep, every time I pull it out, they say, "God damn it, put that away." It's very fast.
Yeah.
So I think it's 1.9. Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. So and maybe Eric, that was your advice too, to go for one of these. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Nice hilt too.
Yeah.
This one,
They're gonna have like this type
that's
of-
also a Danelli ribbon hilt.
Oh, yeah. How heavy is that?
It's about 1.6, which is just right for the original sword.
It must not be very wide.
Well, this is like massively wide, but it's quite a thin blade. So
Yeah, it's we've been practicing this stuff with everything from Viking swords to arming swords that are from.
yes, I have noticed that.
Right.
And even something in there that looks a bit like a rapier.
Yeah. We're over Olympic fencing stuff because I think there's some pertinent transitions from
Yeah.
this that are worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
When they first went back.
You have a question or
Closer to the ferry.
Quick question, Paul.
Yes.
With the initial contact, so you're coming in, you make imbricata, you're stepping in to your left to choke it up and then compassing out to your right? Or
If you're starting in open or like
you're
what we were
starting-
just doing,
if you're starting it open.
yeah,
and then
step
you
out
pop down the
to,
imbricata,
yeah,
am I going this way here?
no, you don't
Okay.
have time.
Okay,
That's you can't choke this one up because you need the time and space to get that big circle happening.
okay.
So you're triangle stepping away out to the right.
So when I'm going into garden here, my imbricata is here, I go into garden by taking my right leg forward.
Correct.
And
Yes.
then compassing out, okay,
Yeah. So you're kind of stepping under your sword.
okay.
You don't have
Literally-
time to step forward and left in this
Literally
particular
under
case.
ward.
Yeah.
A question. You mentioned this only works from open fight way up here.
Yeah. If you have it back there, you can't get
Yeah,
the point there in time. So if you're planning to parry garden from open rather than holding it back there, which you might do sometimes, you're
yeah,
going to have it up there, or even with your hand turned slightly that way. Like
Because
whenever I'm going to do an imbricata thrust from open even, I will
Yeah.
hold my open, turn slightly that way to make the dropping of that point quicker.
okay,
So, which can be a slight tell if people notice that every time you adjust your open that way, you stab them in the face,
okay.
but it's worth it to save the time.
A question in that vein or coming from that. One of the things, Silver mentions that open can be straight up or canted backwards.
Or back a little bit, which is best, yes.
Which is best. I've read that as that's best because you can get to garden or imbricata from a rotation from behind. Why do you think it's best? Is that where you?
I think, okay, so I personally think it's best because from there you get more of a wind up and gives the other person more time to make a mistake. So you've got more time if I make
Okay.
that extension than I do if I make that extension.
Okay.
I also adjust this up a little bit. Like I started doing that just naturally when I first started learning, just because I found that by doing that, I had more time to go, oh, he's over there than I did when I was here. Same reason I think open works better sword foot back than it does sword foot forward for the same reason, in that
Okay.
this gives me more time. I don't have to have decided what I'm doing till I'm there
Okay.
and I'm about to move my feet. I've never found that
Useful.
particularly useful, except as an oh shit move.
Yep. Okay.
Basically, because it doesn't, as the sword's going around that way, it doesn't really have the sort of structural strength to stop a heavy blow.
Okay.
If I'm already in garden, I can brace and stand against it. If the sword's in motion in that kind of rotation, as something's coming in and it doesn't hit right in the forte, then I find it's not particularly great.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
How are you guys anyway?
Doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the plague?
This is our new location.
Oh, did the other place close down or something?
Yeah, they lost that part of the facility, so we had someone else ended up renting up the bit that had
Right.
the loft in, so we had to look for a new home. And most of the
Yep.
time we spent out in parks, and then we sort of relocated here.
Yeah.
Costs an arm and a leg, but at least we have a spare arm and leg afterwards.
Is there
Yes.
is there a good pub close by there?
Yeah, we can find a few. Yeah.
Okay,
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a nice one, like about a mile away, that's like outdoor seating and stuff, which has been quite nice. So
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple breweries too. That's
Wonderful.
helpful.
Cool. Well, I look forward to coming back and seeing you guys in person at some point.
Yes,
definitely.
please.
There's vague plans to come to a big Canadian Highland gathering thing in July. I don't know if that will happen because it was supposed to happen last year and the year before, and obviously it didn't. So I don't know how that's going to go plague wise. If
Yeah,
it's going
let
to
us
go
know
ahead or
anytime
not.
you're coming in the country, and we'll work something out at least. You can
Yeah.
always stop off here and we'll get you some drinks.
Well, I tell you what, like there was one missed email between me and Devin Borman,
Yeah.
which meant I didn't go to Viz that year, in which case I would have definitely come to see you, which means I would have been there at exactly the same time the plague arrived. Yeah.
And stuck.
Yeah,
Stuck here.
Yeah,
forever.
they're quite likely stuck. Exactly.
So
So.
I could give you a tent outside. We don't have so many poisonous critters around here.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's been
Yeah,
a
we
weird couple
actually-
of years.
Actually, we've been spending the last year and a half or so chatting about silver stuff online and practicing it and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm not wasted this whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to hold any controversial discussion topics for after 4 o'clock when other people.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All that silly stuff that was happening. Yeah.
Mike heard online George Silver and
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately left
Yeah.
to shut that down. I
You know,
agree.
online with a small group of people who
Good
are
instincts, Mike.
reading from the reading directly from the text and going through and trying to puzzle things through and come up with some bits, going back to primary sources, not arguing with people on Facebook. Oh God, please no.
I live for that.
So what's next?
All right. Chap in green. Hi. What's your name?
Ben,
Ben. Hi. Well, I don't know if you do this when you're fighting, but when you're drilling, you make the most amazingly committed attacks.
thank you.
Which means that if the other guy does parry you, you're screwed. There's no way you're going to get out of there. So I thought the next thing to talk about might be the striking and flying out thing, because like Silver talks in sort of Zen-like terms about having the twifold mind. As you have a mind to go in, so you have a mind to go out. So he's not committing everything into one huge leap forward for glory or death. He's hedging his bets every time he attacks. So part of that is the timing in that you're, I'll get that sword there. Is there we are. So part of that is, of course, the true times, in that my hand is there before I've decided if I'm going to attack or not. If it's not looking good, I can just say, all right, I'm actually going to step back and not bother. And if I need to, I can redirect my sword to protect myself from whatever they're doing. But the other thing about it is the fit footwork, in that very rarely do I ever want to make a pass directly forward. There are a few instances where it's tactically useful, but most of the time you want to do your triangle stepping. You want to triangle step right or left on every attack. And generally speaking, if I'm doing a downright blow, I'm going to triangle step out to the right. If I'm in guard, left leg forward, and I'm doing a reverse blow, I'll triangle step forward and left. And the nice thing about the triangle steps is they achieve the striking and flying out in one smooth motion. I know you can't actually see my feet, but you can imagine that here I am out of distance, passing forward and right, in distance, out of distance again, just by completing that step. So the only point at which I'm close enough for the other person to hit me is the time I'm hitting them or they're defending themselves. And by the time I've made that corrective step, I'm automatically back out of distance. So it's one and out. The other thing that's not really important for what we do, but important to know, is that if it was a sharp sword and I was actually trying to cut them, I will use the top of my chair as the example here. So here I am, I make my attack forward and right. I've hit them with my sword. Look what happens to the blade as I make my corrective step. See how it's drawn through? So if I was actually cutting somebody, the corrective step does the drawing through of the blade. I don't know if you guys do a lot of test cutting with sharps or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's worth doing every now and again. But you'll find that that triangle step actually makes the cut really easy with a sharp sword, because you're not needing to artificially draw it the same way 19th century saber people used to do, or Japanese swordsmen do. Your footwork does it for you. Your body drags the sword through the target, which means all you've got to do is keep your arm straight and swing, which makes cutting really easy. So I thought we might just do start off really simple with some simple triangle step attacks right and left. So target dummy can either get hit or parry depending on what they feel like doing. And the attacker, start an open fight, go downright blow, recover into garden, then triangle stepping forward and left, reverse blow, back to open. Downright blow, recover to garden, reverse blow, back to open. And at every chance, just check that once you finish, you are out of distance of your opponent. I'm going to attempt to watch your feet and make sure you're not overcorrecting. That's the thing on the retreating step. Don't overcorrect. Don't go beyond heels in line, because that brings you back into distance. You just want to go sideways, straight back, sideways, straight back, if that makes sense. Okay, give it a go.
This is a drill?
This is a drill, yes.
Okay.
Do it in pairs. Person defending can just stand there and get hit, or parry as they see fit.
Okay. Through that. Yeah. All right. Right. Through that swing.
serve the rate. Only one serve.
Gonna try to tag. Or just be ready to go. Just like the box watching.
Very bad.
Go ahead.
Same with quarterback. First one.
Yeah.
Paul, I remember Silver saying something about like, wanting to step towards the other guy's right-hand side.
Let all your gatherings be towards your opponent's right-hand side, so you may choke the blow up before it's in its full
That's the
form.
one, yeah. So you gather that way, but then when it comes time to swing and cut, like
Yeah, no, the thing is, if you're
the
the attacker,
Yeah.
you don't want them to choke your blow up.
okay, yeah.
So you give yourself as much space as possible by going as sideways as possible.
I wish that was the problem right now. Just feel correct.
You want some more cheese?
Yeah, I had the exposure to. Really sure. Much worse.
Recording in progress.
All right.
You attack. Not bad. 1, 2, 1, 2.
I like this format of seminar, like you're eating crackers and cheese.
Thanks, Australia.
Okay, switch.
All righty, let's get everyone in. If you can hear me. Okay, I've set my phone up outside. It is kind of raining, so I won't be out there very long, but at least it'll give me a chance to display some footwork. Alex asked a very pertinent question about Silver, saying that all your gatherings be to your opponent's right-hand side so you may choke their blow up before it's in its full force. When you're defending yourself from, say, garden fight, that's really obvious how that works. How it works in attacking is a little trickier, and that's what I'm going to go outside to demonstrate. Hopefully, I'm not sure if I'll have the sound working out there yet, but you will hopefully see my feet, and I will attempt to explain what's going to happen. So, if I am...
It's going outside to eat his food, so Sherman doesn't get in the way.
Yeah. Okay, so what's going to happen is, from here, rather than making the attack directly on that right foot step, which is good for me, it gives me a chance to get around to the right and away from their attack and all that. But it also opens me up a little bit to a counter attack over that side. I've got to get my sword quite a long way over there to protect myself from a counter attack. So as an initial step, rather than just going straight there, I can actually take my left leg to the left. I can make this little gathering step forward and left before I make my triangle step. So I'm almost going to sort of page-like wide stance. This puts my sword in the same line as their sword. So it makes narrow space on them, which makes it harder for them to counterattack at me without diminishing my ability to make the attack and fly out in nice smooth motion. The other thing that it does is gets me a little bit closer. So again, if you're height challenged and you just can't hit people on a simple pass forward, this allows you to steal a little bit of distance. So I'm going to go outside. I'll attempt to get the sound working on the phone and then try and show it happening with actual feet.
It's very like.
Unmute. Okay, I have unmuted. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
All right. I really can't see the screen when I'm back there, so I'm just going to hope everything is going to be in frame. Okay. So what I'm going to do, hello button, if you come to say hello, without hitting that, rather than go attack like so, my initial step is actually going to be that. I go bang, then I make my pass and attack. Hello.
Forward.
Oh, pussycat. Have your 5 seconds of fame. Say hello to Button, everyone.
Hey, bud.
All right, off you go. Here we go. So, one, then make your attack. And you'll find that this puts you basically, again, in that line of the choking up anything they can do, because from there, my extension is already covering me from any sort of counterattack they're likely to make. I still make my pass forward and a little bit to the right and safely behind my sword, and I still get to fly out of distance with that corrective step. So we're just adding in an extra little preliminary step, little jig gathering step to the left before you make your attack. Could you see that?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I'll go inside out of the drizzle. Actually, I may as well leave this here in case I need it again.
So you're
But
still
other
passing
than that,
with the right though.
yes, you still pass. Yes.
Left shift,
Initial
right.
step is just that. Then you make your attack with the right.
Got it. Okay.
And also, Silver talks about indirecting people without really much definition, but this does seem to indirect people in that if I do that, people think I'm going to go this way. So they'll start to they'll turn that way and suddenly it's, no, actually I'm going that way.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah, that looks good. Cool.
Yeah. Ballsy. I guess I'm the initiator. Paul, who's the initiator? Is it for what we're doing here?
Okay, you should be initiating, the other person should be target dummy.
He's target dummy.
So if you're making a cross step, you're initiating the attack.
Okay, so yeah.
And Paul, in the spirit of the true times, what's the timing of the sword arm? Like,
Okay, so the little cross step should not put you in distance. So you shouldn't move your arm until you've done your little gathering step.
Okay, so I'm not really throwing my sword forward on that.
Until you're ready to make your real attack. Yes.
Got it.
Okay. Oh no.
Version of the, almost like the. we had taken earlier.
where in the lake? Pardon? Ready in the lake? Hey, Paul,
Yes,
the moment of your attack, so you step to the side.
yeah, you do a little gather.
Is your downright blow pretty linear? Is it,
It can be more linear than what we were doing prior to this. You don't
okay.
need to go as far sideways. Yeah.
And when you step in, are you already engaged in covering yourself? Or does it?
Okay, so that's the same question twice. So generally speaking, unless I'm trying to provoke a reaction, this step doesn't get me into distance, so I'm not going to move my hand until I'm ready to do that bit. Okay? If I'm trying to get them to make a mistake, then I might well go, here's my extension, what are you going to do? Try and get a response. But generally speaking, in terms of true times, I'm out of distance. I'm still out of distance. Now I'm in distance. So I move my sword when I'm making that passing step with the right foot. The other thing that this little cross step does is it solves the problem of trying to attack from a left leg forward with a reverse blow. So I'll go outside again. How's that, Miss Cats? Okay, make sure. Let's see. So if I was standing here and I wanted to cut with a reverse blow, my options are a bit limited. I can kind of do it on a little left foot lunge that doesn't get me very far. Traditionally, I would use what Degrassi calls the crooked pace, where I step across this way. So it's that action. That has the disadvantage that it does kind of present my back to the opponent.
Yeah, you gotta be pivoting.
So if I go here, I can now make that reverse cut on almost a linear pass, only a little bit to the left, which is a lot safer for me because it gets me further behind my sword. So from here, I've now got the choice of the reverse cut or the downright blow. And the defender can't tell what I'm going to do. I don't even have to make up my own mind until I've done it. Okay. So cross step, reverse cut. And you do want to go a little bit across, not straight linear, because I still want to fly out, because my next step is going to be that and running away. Cross step, left and run away. Out of distance. Could we all see that?
Yep. Yes.
All right, let's give it a go.
Was that different from the last one we did?
No, it's just the side step with a reverse cut.
I was going on that you can, once you've made side step, you can still choose between the
Yeah.
reverse cut or the standard cut before you're getting into time and range.
So yeah, that first step here gives me the optionality there to do that cross reverse cut or that reverse cut, or to cut in like I was gonna do anyway on the inside.
Because once you've made the left, you haven't demonstrated your intent yet. And then
beginning of film on Tonton.
Right? Yeah. Alex, your friend is here, the editor is here.
Patiently waiting.
To attract the cat, you must act like the cat.
So you, Alex, you guys have done enough Fiore to recognize the little step.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. We were just going, ooh, look, it's it's the exchange of thrusts. There's a little bit that has in common with sword in one hand too. So
Yeah,
it's you're starting with a right lead in that instead of a left lead.
yeah, but it's the same basic geometry. So
Yeah.
Yes, open up the head so you can
Into
pass.
the master of two-handed sword as well, with that left step, I believe.
What's
Or
that?
no, Aren't there also a few first master plays from Fiore that involve that little left step? If I
yeah,
remember.
Fiore does something very similar, and I'm quite sure it's for exactly the same reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pressure.
It's to close a line as you come in too.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
closes the line and that sort of thing.
So a quick thing, Paul. I remember from long ago, you talking about how you like to back up in silver stuff, and you do that little sort of like little short steps, sort of shuffling
Yes.
backward kind of thing. And
Yes.
is that so? The purpose for that, other than like it gets you out of range at a decent pace, is the purpose also so that you can get back in again, and you're not like committed to flying out, and you can now it's like a twofold
Yeah.
line, but going forwards again.
Yeah, Silver talks about it being narrow paced rather than wide paced.
All right.
So
yeah.
making small, and I think it's Dobringer says the same thing. Says make multiple short steps rather than great big leapy steps. And it also allows you to kind of maneuver. You know, if somebody's chasing you and you're making little steps, you can circle one way or the other.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're making great big leaps, you can't. So, but yeah.
Cool.
So one other thing just to say about all that is you've taken this step back, you are momentarily in kind of a wide pace. What happens if the other person attacks you at this point? Okay, they see you do that, they realize, oh, they're about to do something, I better take my opportunity to hit them. And you get a really cool bit of sort of defensive geometry here, which is if I'm standing basically square on and they attack with a downright blow, I step back with that foot and countercut. and then it automatically gets me, they're aiming there. I do that, I'm no longer there. I'm behind my sword and can counter-attack. If they go this way with a reverse cut or they're a lefty, I step back with the other foot and counter-cut. And once again, as soon as I've stepped there, I'm no longer there. I'm behind my sword and I get to counter-cut. Even cooler is if they're a little bit close, I can hit them while also stepping backwards. I will attempt to demonstrate the geometry. So there's my target, the chair. I'm in a wide space. I can't quite reach the chair. Can we see that?
Mm-hmm.
If I step back, heels in line with either foot, I can. For shortened reach, stepping back increases my reach. So if I'm here and somebody wanders close enough that I think, oh, they're nearly in range, they're slightly out of distance, their distance is good, but a couple of inches will do it, I can hit them while stepping backwards. I go wide stance to narrow stance, stepping back as I throw my attack, and I get to hit them. So, yes?
Can you do that? Can you do that other side, go doing the reverse side again?
Okay, I'll go outside.
Because that seems unnatural, but effective.
The shoulders coming forward, that's what.
Yeah,
creates-
yeah, that's what I wanted to see.
Like page equilibrium. going
Okay,
on.
so if you're talking about being left leg forward while cutting with your right arm,
Yep.
it's one of the advantages single swords have over two-handed swords in that you can actually do that without hurting your back. Okay, like the sword, single-handed sword has much greater freedom of movement. The other thing it does is, again, it increases your range. So there's a target to demonstrate. I hope.
Oh, Paul, he's like.
There we are. All right.
Without
Sword foot forward, full extension. Can't reach it. Even if I lean. Okay, that's my full extension. If, however, I'm sword foot back, I can. This gives me a greater range than that because I get to bring this shoulder by turning the torso further forward. So even though it's a wee bit uncomfortable, it can actually give you greater range. In that previous exercise we were doing, move the wheel again.
Okay, there, you're out of range. And then do the twist.
We were going step to the right on the downright blow and step to the left on the reverse blow. You can also mix those up. You got to be careful that you don't expose yourself to a counter cut.
This is also still forward.
But I can go
Bring my body forward, like.
downright blow stepping left,
So I can still keep that shoulder.
and I
forward.
can go
Right, so on this
reverse
side,
blow stepping
keep
right.
the shoulder forward, but I can't.
So
bring
those
this-
are sort of options that you've got in there as well. But for now, this is what I want you to practice. Defender, just stand there like a dummy. You're just target. The attacker, I want you to
I just get.
step into a wide stance so that you're just out of range of your opponent,
Let's see.
and then correct the step and see if you can get into distance. And once you've done that, get to this position, get them to attack you with a downright or reverse, and step back. If they attack you that way, step back with the other foot and countercut. Just so that you learn that if I'm here and I'm attacked, I'm not defenseless. I can still countercut just by going back to a narrow stance. Does that make sense?
Yep. It seems like witchcraft, but yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so I'll just make it work. Yeah,
Okay, so I'm trying to be here.
just out of range. Yeah.
No, you're supposed to try it.
Yeah.
I think
In that open fight, and
Yeah.
then you're going to have that wide stance.
Yeah, and so then twist on the strike, it puts you in range.
I think, did I understand that?
Yeah.
I think we're doing, I think I'm supposed to be moving in some way after you've made that.
Well, for this drill, he was saying that the patient just stays there as a target.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So here.
Compare it to the other stuff, the front one.
Still out of range.
We'll switch it here.
Yeah.
And then switch hands. Switch toward the other hand. Switch.
Like 2 inches worth.
Yeah. You showed this to us at punches.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right there.
Wow, so it's just
Because that
a
hip
little
twist, the hip
side
twist.
slip.
So, yeah.
So
I'm-
here, there's my reach here. Yeah, and then here.
Not much, just-
There you go.
Facing.
Okay.
Bringing your foot back, keep it at the same distance, but just move it horizontal.
I was gonna do. Step and try to- And you were going to.
That makes sense, because I'm basically, my stance is so narrow that my shoulder is limited in range of twisting my forward. When I fall out to the left, I've got a little more flexibility because my hips are turned out. And so my shoulder is able to reach forward. and hit you.
Yeah, because it's after you've made that slight left step. You flatten yourself back.
Yeah,
So now the hip twist is giving you
right.
that extra.
Open
range.
up
Yeah.
the hips.
Yeah.
And now the shoulder can go further forward.
You guys can use him.
You're gonna get a haircut, dude.
It's grown in.
I lost track of
Yeah.
what I was doing and I shaped it bald patch.
Yeah.
Very.
Oh, clearly.
The only people who care about poodle's hair are the owners.
Yeah.
I'm a poodle owner with this.
Sloppy.
I just gotta get a clipper, using these combs that put on top of it.
Yeah.
And they just don't go through.
Oh, that's a
So
big
it takes them off to clip on that comb. Which is as hard on him as it is on me. Just out of range, just shift off.
One more. and then-
I'm good.
You guys ready to move on?
They cheated, that's the year they cheated.
Oh, really?
And,
How did they cheat?
they were getting signs. Signs in real,
Oh,
picture
wow.
signs in real time,
Jeez.
almost the entire year.
What year?
We're just kind of timeless.
So, as far as I'm concerned, Dodgers are already.
Having somebody in front and then give up. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any particular questions from anybody who wants to cover anything in the time we've got left in particular?
Where does slow hand fit into this?
Where does this, okay.
Go ahead.
Clapton.
Okay, so the whole slow hand thing, let me do that. Okay. Okay, if you want to make that a central part of your tactical fighting, that's fine. It doesn't need to be though, however. Okay. the importance of it is when Silver says don't defend in this way, the reason is almost always because somebody who's good at the whole slow hand redirecting thing can take advantage of it. So don't parry Guardant from variable, because if they switch to the other side, you're not going to have time to make a second parry. You know, and I've got students who are just excellent at this. They'll extend their sword and hover just out of range until you panic and do something, and then they'll hit you somewhere else, because they've just got that really excellent sense of timing and distance. And it's not unique to Silver, it's in Page. When Page is talking about being in St. George on a wide stance, he says, extend your sword and stop at the half throw and see which side they defend and then hit them on the other side. Maya even says the same thing. It says deliberately extend, stop for a second, see what they do, and then hit them somewhere else. So it's not uncommon, and it's really just an inevitable consequence of the fact that your hand can move really fast and your hand can do more than one thing while you're stepping into distance. And that's all that it really is. So where it fits in is really in the defense. If somebody is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, such as lifting from variable to Guardant to make their parries, you can take advantage of that. You can make your extension, wait them for them to do it, and hit them on the other side. Does that make sense? Yep. Yeah. Do we want to drill some slow hand stuff, or are we happy with the concept?
We got 10 minutes left before we stop playing and start talking.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to cover? No? The thing that I was going to do if I had the choice was to talk a little bit about Guardant fight, because you guys, when you were sparring, were not doing a lot of it.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. So Guardant is really, it's the counter to open. Okay. Open's big and threatening, and the sword's up there, and it can come down at all sorts of angles with cuts and thrusts, and you're not really sure where it's going to come from. Guardant allows you to kind of take the initiative back from open. Okay. And generally speaking, you want to be quite aggressive with it. I'll tootle outside again to demonstrate.
Your cat's like waiting for that cat to steal his chair. Yeah.
Look at this chair.
The chair is incredible. It's the
Yeah.
star of that show.
It looks like it's
Okay. So when we're in Guardant fight, sword should be basically above our right eye, sloping backwards and as close to us as possible. Okay. Some people hold it a bit straighter. I tend to hold it with a slightly bent elbow. And the point about it is to be aggressive. If somebody is in open fight, then you take Guardant and you traverse fairly aggressively forward and left. Okay. If they swing at you into your guard, you've already got a formed guard. That's absolutely perfect. If they swing at you, I'm not only in guard, but I'm already moving in the direction Silver wants me to move. I'm going to choke that blow up before it's in its full force. Okay. And then I get to parry, riposte, left hand grapples, and all that sort of stuff that comes from there. If they panic and they go to the other side, and really, if I'm circling you like this, I'm really inviting you to attack to the other side. And the way you defend yourself is really important, because I've seen a lot of people who will do this. They'll roll over into an outside guard to defend the outside line. That's wrong, okay? Because if I do that, I am leaving a big undefended hole in the middle. So how does the slow hand fit in? This is another thing, okay? Where Silver says, do not parry forehand from open or Guardant. So he's telling you not to do that. And the reason is that if you are doing that, I can go extend, draw your forehand parry, roll under it with an imbricata and stab you in the face and deceive it. So we need to stop them doing that. So the way we defend ourselves is basically a horizontal cut out to broadward. That's a digressy broadward. Okay, point might be slightly down or slightly up depending on relative heights and the angle of the attack. But basically what you want to do is stick your point in your opponent's face or possibly even smack them in the side of the head, in the temple. And I do that stepping forward and left like that. That's my defense. Sometimes it'll end up as a single time parry and countercut to the side of the head. Sometimes it will be parry and you turn down your point and stab them in the chest, which is the first suggestion Silver gives us.
Yeah, it's in the.
So the drill is going to be this. One person is going to be in open fight. One person is going to be in garden. The person in garden is going to traverse to the left, staying in garden.
Is that a bastard guard?
What?
Is that a bastard guard?
Bastard garden is anything below the face.
Okay.
Inside and outside half tangers of bastard garden. By distinguishing true and bastard, Silver's basically just saying don't do that. It's either above your head or it's below your head. It's nothing in between. So that's really the only importance of bastard garden. Okay? But anyway, so one of you is going to be an open, the other person is going to be a garden. Garden is going to be the aggressor. You're going to circle aggressively around your opponent to the left. If you get close enough and the other person has not done anything, you throw that cut and hit them on the sword arm. Okay? Or the side of the head. Okay? You basically gain the place and you get to strike them really quickly. If they swing a downright blow at you, you just keep circling, parry it, and come in and riposte. If they strike with a reverse blow, you cut out into broadward, parry it, and then stab them in the face. Okay? Which is basically the same action you would do if they didn't attack you. Be aggressive. Okay? The person in garden should be taking the initiative here. They should be saying, I'm not scared of open. I'm coming to get you. Okay? The other trick to making this work is most of the time I just say don't watch anything in particular. Just, you know, I don't pay attention to any particular part of my body, but in this case, watching the other person's hand really helps. If you watch their sword hand, then you can tell what they're doing really early and respond accordingly. So are we clear enough on the drill?
One quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a equivalent for lefty for this?
Get him out of here.
Okay, so when I'm fighting left-handed, I can't do the choking up thing. Okay? If I'm here, regardless of which foot is forward, trying to choke that up simply doesn't work biomechanically. I don't have the strength. People will blow through it. Okay? So if I'm fighting left-handed in garden, I circle to the right. I've still got a nice horizontal cut, but I don't have the same choking up ability. And that's just life.
You ever use Montanta?
What's that?
You ever use Montanta for this?
Not as a guard that I can lie in, but as a parry, yes, all the time.
Yeah.
I do that kind of outside Moulinet. Yeah, that's a real friend. The other thing that I will do is I'll take like an imbricata kind of outside line hanger there, which basically cuts off that line of attack and encourages them to come inside, which allows me to do a sort of garden parry.
Okay.
But yeah, you can't step in and choke it up in left-handed garden, unfortunately. Doesn't work.
All right, let's do this for a few minutes.
Okay.
No. There's some feedback going on.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost done. Let's call it, okay? All right.
Okay, Mike,
Yes,
I was going to say the person in blue there,
Ashley.
yeah, you were tending to countercut with like downright blows. Hang on, I've got reverb coming from the phone, so I'll try and get rid of that. Okay, hopefully that's fixed that. What you want to do is you want to cut outward horizontally. Okay, yes, you're circling to your opponent's outside line. That cut, yes, but up at the sword arm and head, shoulder height or above. That's it. Okay, that can be used as a parry, and it's a much safer way of attacking them because you're behind your sword and they can't just hit you. If you go for a downright blow or anything on the inside line, they can countercut at you.
Thank you. All right. Let's, shall we take a little bit of a break and then reconvene in a few minutes, and then we'll just, I want to add some questions, and I'm sure the other guys do, about some various things.
Yep, sounds like a plan.
We can watch Andrew and Alex, that'd be fun. Okay, so a few minutes and then we'll reconvene.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
I actually think this format is working pretty well.
Yeah, it does. If I could see you on my phone when I'm outside, that would be ideal because I could just do it out there, but I just can't see anything in the glare. So
We have a pretty fancy setup. We bought ourselves a GoPro and have a fancy camera, a microphone, and a big widescreen TV. So
awesome. Yeah.
That has to be pretty good. So
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So excuse me for a minute.
Yeah. Off you go. How about you guys? Seattle, you happy with that?
I don't think they're listening, but
I don't think they were listening either, but hey, yes, sir.
this kind of lateral strike is in the form you gave me. And it's in the form you gave me. I love it.
Yeah.
Garden, this strike.
Out to Broadwood, yeah.
Strike. And Andrew. So it's very this movement here from this position to this kind of aggressive sort of horizontal high line attack is very similar to the roof attack in my Rene Latos's Eskrima system. No, it's like exactly like in the roof attack, you kind of throw the idea is you're throwing a reverse head strike that comes over your head and kind of floats into the opponent's head. And if you move out to the left as you throw it, you're essentially doing exactly the same thing that you were advocating here. you're basically throwing it through that line and then you're connecting it, and through the same conclusion, if you're slightly out of range, you end up cross with the weapon, and then you just take a step forward and you bring the point in.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly what Silver says. Yeah.
exactly the same as the Latosa roof attack, which I thought was really, really cool.
I'm going to say 25, 30 years ago now, maybe, Steve Hand was doing a demonstration of very, very preliminary understanding of silver
Yeah.
at some public thing. And somebody came up to him afterwards and says, that's not real. That's just Filipino martial arts.
Yeah.
That's not real European stuff.
Yeah.
You could argue about who came first.
You could, but yeah, no, but but they were saying all the sort of garden grapple hit stuff. He says that's all Filipino stuff.
Yeah, we knew that in the 1930s when the Japanese invaded. That's what we were doing.
Yeah.
This goes back a little earlier than that. So yeah, but it's cool. Andrew, I was telling Paul that attack through the horizontal line from the left is basically a roof attack.
There's the homologies there are huge. I mean, when you think about it, there's the roof, but the entire box system there is essentially make a true cross, make an attack at 90 to your opponent's attack, which is one of the reasons silver makes so much sense to me. Is that idea of basically countercutting on a 90 no matter what happens as a way of defense and creating threat at the same time. Yeah, as well as the transitional ideas.
Yeah, I'm just going to show you one of my new toys. I got an Alchem practical katana and I had it re-hilted as a Kai Gunto.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, Paul. I just started. That's hell nice.
It's awesome. It only works if you scream as you attack, though.
Oh.
If you yell as you attack, it's absolutely beautiful. But every time I forget to yell, they hit me.
Yeah. Yep. Fair.
But yeah, no. Having that hilt, it's just like, oh, suddenly this is a sensible weapon.
Yeah. A question for you, Paul, on Alchem. I actually just found out about them, and they seem to be like the place to go for a reasonably priced basket hilt trainer, and they'll do stuff out to like proper backsword length. So we're not like messing with these 32-inch, 33-inch broadswords and can do something.
Yeah, we're quite happy with Alchem.
Okay.
They did it's in the car, but I can go get it and show you in a bit. But they did a basket hip model for us, which is a lot more protective than the standard one. We're actually about to put in another big order with them, and they're very, very reasonably priced.
Yeah, I just was talking with them. Okay, so you've liked dealing with them then.
Yeah, and I've got the blades are beautiful because they're all. There's one here. They're all this sort of very tapered triangular blade, which means that it kind of makes up for the lack of distal taper. So they handle really, really beautifully. They're also nearly indestructible. This sword here is probably over 20 years old, and there's barely a nick on the blade. So if you get a good one, it will last more or less forever. That said, we've had a few bad batches where they've busted, but you know, that happens to everyone, and they're so cheap that replacement blades are easy to get hold of and quite reasonable. So yeah, Alchem are good.
Okay.
Hello, I just wanted to say hello. I'm Maya.
Hello.
Hello, Mike, Michael, Peter, Alex, Andrew, Eric, and everybody else. I don't know Eric Artz, but hello. I was just interested, my background's in Filipino stuff, and I read George Silver's Paradoxes of Defense about 4 years into training with my teacher, and I was like, oh, look, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And my viewpoint, of course, is not necessarily technical. It's just tactically the same ideas, which makes complete sense to me because that's what works.
Yes.
I very much like the fact that he's, he doesn't have preferences in many ways. He says offense, defense, same. Both people can win from that. Of course, I want to apologize ahead of time in that my terminology is not the same as HEMA guys' terminology. And so
That's right. We've got a couple of Filipino martial artists here, so they can translate.
Yeah. So my questions are more general, just so you know, about his thinking and how he came to his thinking. And if you know, I'm not sure how much there is that we know about, why he decided that this was the right way to fight. And I'm assuming it's from experience, but again, opinions differ on that. So I was just curious about that. And also, if you could talk a little bit about false time versus true time.
Okay. So experience-wise, we don't know a lot about Silva himself. I reckon he was in Ireland. I reckon he was in the wars in Ireland in the 1590s, just because the way he describes battle and some of the weapons that he mentions, like skeins, are Irish. And I think he was fighting rebellions in Ireland in the 1590s, and that's where he had his military experience. But as far as the tactical approach, I think it's traditional English. Because if you look at Swetnam, who's a close contemporary of Silva, pretty well exactly the same tactical principles. George Hale, who wrote a small little treatise around the same time, not a lot of technical stuff in it, but again, the principles pretty much exactly the same.
So can I ask you, when you say English, what makes it English? Is it mannerisms? Is it considered more peasant than aristocrat? It's like, what is it that makes it English, as opposed to French, Italian, or Spanish?
Okay, that's a good question. So first of all, martial arts in England were definitely different to the rest of Europe, and had been for a long time, largely because the society had developed differently, because you didn't really have serfs in England. You had yeomen who were free men, and the English relied for their military strength on not professional armies, not mercenaries, but by armies of billmen and bowmen, all drawn from the yeomanry class. So they not only did they have the right to wander around with weapons, that the crown actually wanted them to. We want you to go and spend 2 hours on every Sunday learning how to shoot a bow so that we can go and kick the French. Okay. And, you look at the other most traditional English weapon, the quarterstaff, it's just a big stick. It can be, if you've got an oar, you've got a quarterstaff. If you've got a farm implement, you've got a quarterstaff.
Yeah.
And they did actually not just tolerate martial training among the yeomanry, that they actually encouraged it. Whereas if you go over to Europe, say in Germany, peasants weren't allowed to carry swords. Absolutely not. So they got around that by making
hierarchical.
knives. So there's definitely a different hierarchy in England. And I think the fact that you're talking about basically farmers and apprentices going out and playing sword and bucker on a Friday night after a couple of pints for fun mean that you're looking at a very simple, practical approach to combat, as opposed to something that an aristocrat who can hire a private fencing master and spend 6 hours a week practicing. That's a very different art.
Yeah, it always
there's
seems
also
that
a whole bunch.
I was going to just say that the British were always looked at as kind of yobs now.
Yeah.
Right up until.
So armies of soccer hooligans.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were pirates. They weren't important. They were these upstarts on the edge that fought dirty, and it wasn't particularly pleasant.
Yeah, and you get there's like references of probably half a dozen references from European visitors to England or people commenting on English armies in Europe from the Middle Ages right up to Silva's time, saying the English all have these really big, heavy swords, and they're much bigger and heavier than everybody else's, and everybody carries weapons everywhere you go. And it was noted as being a completely different martial culture to mainland Europe. And I think that has a definite effect on the arts, in that it's something that a drunk apprentice can do with very little formal training and become quite proficient at it. And also, I noticed that the English embrace technological solutions to martial problems. So the basket hilt, like, why would you not want that around your hand? It's, you know, it's a really good idea. And I don't know if you've seen an English buckler.
Yep.
But it's a huge thing with a great big spike out the middle and a different shape entirely to go along with that sword. And again, it's fantastic. It's a technological solution to a martial problem. So rather than get better at manipulating your little buckler, it says, no, let's just redesign the buckler to be better.
So were the British also known as cheats to the foreigners abroad?
I think I don't think if you win it counts as cheating. So
but if you look at cultures that are much more impressed with honor, say the Spanish, the Italians, and the French, and spend a lot of time doing things correctly so that both the families can still know each other afterwards, I see that perhaps there's some difference in what motivates you to behave or move in a certain way, perhaps.
Well, certainly by Silver's time, the code of honor had been imported wholesale, and the aristocrats had taken it up. But they did get there. It was an imported thing. So way back when the Normans invaded England, they brought with them the judicial duel, which was common all over Europe. And if you're in Germany, for example, particularly if you're any sort of middle to upper class person, you can be challenged to a judicial duel over a land dispute, or, you know, somebody thinks you're sleeping with their wife, or whatever it is, at any time.
All classes?
No, I think mostly the upper classes. But the point is that you need to know how to fight in a certain way to survive that particular encounter, because somebody dies. Every time there's a judicial duel, somebody is going to die. Okay, so we'll just circle around each other until you're tired, and then we'll go to the pub. This is no, you have to kill them. And that's going to have a very different effect on how you think about fighting. If you're saying, okay, you know, if I get into a dispute over the fence with the guy over on the other side of my property, we might end up in court, which means I might end up in a duel. So I need to know how to fight in that certain way. And the Normans recognized that this was not an English custom, and they excused the English from having to participate from year dot. So it actually died out pretty quick in England. So the duel of honor was not a big part of English culture at all. And so that's going to have a very different effect on how you learn your fighting as well.
But having a couple at the pub and fighting it there, that was okay.
Yeah. Getting drunk and having a fight at the pub, that's a completely different thing. But in that instance, you can all go home at the end of the day if you do it right.
So, Lonin, do you guys have any questions or things you want to talk about with Paul?
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll come back to the true times and false times in a minute.
No, sorry.
That's all right. No, Lonin, go ahead.
So that, I mean, I don't know if you saw that I put a couple on the comment thing on the Facebook page, but I was kind of interested in so when Silver describes the wards for the different weapons going through paradoxes, and you've got wards for like 4 wards for single weapons and 8 wards for double weapons and all that kind of stuff. Just the consistency between them, I'm assuming they're not like completely different wards for different weapons. They're just like,
you would assume so, yeah.
Down, you know.
Yeah. All right. So the way I interpret it,
and particularly for the buckler, because I like bucklers.
Yeah. So
yeah, we got some staff. We'll move into the staff questions. I got a quick one in there once we get towards the staff too.
Yeah. So when Silver uses the word ward, he means the position that you hold your weapon in order to ward or block a blow. Okay. So it's not a lying, it's not a guard on guard position, it's where you block blows. So the way I interpret it is if you've got a single weapon, your 4 wards are point up that side, point out that side, point down that side, and point down that side. And if I've got a 2-handed weapon, it's the same. Point up, point down, point up, point down. Okay. And obviously that can go over that side, that can go over that side, that can go over that side. But those are the 4 basic positions. Do I have a buckler hanging around?
Yeah.
I don't think I have a buckler hanging around. But if you've got a double weapon, in other words, you've got 1 in each hand, I think you're looking at basically the same thing. I'll just give me 30 seconds and I'll go and get a buckler and I'll get the Alchem sword while I'm there.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Hey, thanks for setting it up.
Organizing it.
This actually worked out pretty well to have a interactive.
Yeah.
So I'd say we should do this more often.
Yeah. Also, for, again, we're all relatively near one another. I've been corresponding with Alchem. I have a sword on order for, perusal of our club, and they do a discount for volume orders. If people wanted to try and coordinate on that, I'm going to try and get something going down here when time comes. But that may be a thing to think about.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Another thing is I don't know how many of you have Paul's book, but I want to get him to make it available for as a PDF for less than $495, which is what it is.
Okay, yes, Steve Hand's sales site has it on. I can send you the link to that. I meant to do that before the seminar, but it's been a busy week. So first of all, staccato model Alchem broadsword with a nice smooth round hilt. It's not particularly heavy metal, but because it's a globe, things tend to bounce off it rather than collapse it. Really nice, light, maneuverable broadswords and cheap as chips.
Who made it?
Alchem. Alchem fencing.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah, so highly recommended. So because you've got basically these 4 hand positions, okay? So it's basically that, and that. If you've got something in the other hand, I think Silver's talking essentially about the same thing, okay? I've got that, but I've also got that, hand upside down, which is the equivalent of the hanger. So if I want to parry something on my outside line, I can just make it over there, same as I would do as an inside guard, or I can turn it over into a hanging guard. Okay, which actually gets it there a bit nicer.
Yeah,
and I've also got.
He only says 2. The buckler's only 2 for the. He's got 2 for the head.
Yes, there's that and that.
And that, and then you got.
Yeah, but you could, if you've got a dagger, you've got point up, point down guard. So I think he's basically talking about the same 4 hand positions.
Okay.
Ward, 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 ward. Do the same thing with the other weapon, and that gives you your 8.
Okay.
Even if some of them, like that, might not be particularly useful with a buckler, so you don't worry about it. In theory, it's there.
That wasn't where I was thinking. Okay.
That's all right. But if the thing is, if it's going to be consistent for all weapons, it has to be something really simple, like 4 hand positions. And the four single weapons, I think, are fairly clear. I don't think there's any argument about that. So it's probably the same for the other hand, regardless of what you've got in it, whether it's a dagger or another sword or a buckler or whatever.
Let's do Andrews.
Well, that actually gets to wards of the staff. and then gets to the interpretation of wards of the glaive and the.
Oh, and the bill and all that. Okay, so the two,
Bill I've been reading is like one of the variants basically being horizontal versus vertical.
yeah, because you've got the head that you can actually parry with the
Yeah.
head, and that gives you, yeah, yes, I agree with that.
All right.
And I think the staff, the reason you've got the warm wards is you've got two ends of the staff.
Okay, yeah,
So, you know, I can parry with the tip, I can parry with the butt pretty well on either side.
okay.
Yeah.
A quick question on staffs in general, or staffs in the Morris or Moorish pike. First, I've been taking Morris as Moorish, if that, you know. with-
Yeah, it's a possibility, yeah.
And it should, and those should be running like, 14 to 16 foot long. As I found, pikes at the time were running 1 3/4 to 2 inches diameter with around like a 5 pound plus weight or so up to, if I,
Yeah.
and 1 3/4 inch to 2 inch, usually a taper at the end. Ash is the ash for the material. Is that kind of in line with what you'd be thinking for that?
It is. Now I think I discovered something about Morris pikes recently. I'm not entirely sure I can find it quickly. It would be in this article if it exists anywhere. So let me just.
You don't want to share your screen or something?
I might do that if I find it. Let's just see.
Just have to prepare.
It should be on module 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Alongside that, the other one question would be the short staff, again, the seminal weapons for silver seem to be backsword and short staff, and
Yeah.
everything that's derived.
Everything else derives from that.
Short staff, basically, my thought has been you should be 1 3/4 inch to 2 inch ash running between 7 and 9 foot,
Yes.
is what I should be looking for if you want to be working with the same weight and size of weapon that silver would have been training with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So just basically cut down. I'm looking for the same thing as my pike cut down is what I'm wondering. It's been my
Yes.
thought, and I want to make sure that it was in line with what you were thinking.
Yeah. When I was at uni, I came across randomly this book on medieval forestry. And I wish I'd written down the reference because it had a paragraph in it about how to make a quarterstaff. It was saying that they would basically cut them the same way that they cut the bows. So you had the heart wood and the outer wood in the same staff, and they were slightly tapered and slightly oval.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So basically a giant pool cue, slightly oval giant pool cue. I had an oval one made and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and suddenly it's just like, oh, actually, I kind of got an edge now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's a trainer for a pole arm too. In that
yeah,
it's a-
exactly.
It's got the same thing as the octagonal setup people use for pole axes, where you have some edge alignment there because you have where things are with the octagon.
Yeah, I found my Morris Pike reference. So
Do I need to do some
a
work?
chap named Francis Gross, published in 1786, says this. He says, the Morris or Moorish pike was a weapon much in use in the 16th century, both by land and sea. Some derive its name from Maurice, Prince of Nassau, whom they suppose to be the inventor of it. But this is certainly an error, as that weapon frequently occurs in descriptions of battles fought in the reign of King Henry VIII, particularly that of Flodden, which happened in the year 1513, 54 years before the birth of Prince Maurice. So therefore, but then there's another reference from the Great London Chronicle from the reign of Edward IV that refers to a long Marys pike, which is marsh. I have passed through many countries of your realm, and in places that I have passed, the rivers have been so high I could scarcely scrape through them. But I was in fain to search the depth with this long staff. So the suggestion is that it's a marsh pike, something that you use for crossing rivers.
Okay. Okay.
So those are the two options, but the fact that it's the sort of pike that they were using, the Scots were using in Flodden, means it's
Marsh.
In the Canary Islands.
well, yeah, which was a marsh, but it means it was a pretty well standard European pike. I've also got Tudor documents saying that the pike shafts were imported from Spain.
Oh, so they're like the Salto Pastor, the pasture jumping in like the Canary Islands and all that then?
That's you sound like you know more about it than me. So those are the
In Iberia,
yes,
they have these like 15-foot long pikes that they use because the vertical terrain that they live on the island.
Yeah, that makes
cliffs and the like.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So
it's really good in the mountains of Canada and snow too. Deep snow.
Yeah, I once was at a medieval weekend in a sort of pine forest in northern New South Wales where it was very cold and very wet and very hilly and very slippery because of the pine needles. And I took my quarterstaff everywhere and I used all 8 foot of it in order to get around. So it actually makes sense that you would actually carry an enormous walking stick like this in certain terrain.
It's still a living tradition in the Canary Islands today. You can find YouTube videos on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, makes sense.
Shall we talk about true times and false times?
Yes, all right. Okay, true times and false times. Okay. Silver says, if the hand is before the foot, it's a true time. If the foot is before the hand, it's a false time. And when he talks hand, he's really talking about weapon. Okay, because he's got one of these. I put my hand before my body because my hand is both shield and sword. Okay, so my weapon is there protecting me as I come in. But I think the most important, the most profound thing about Silver's conception of timing is his recognition that different parts of the body moves at different speeds. Mm-hmm. Hands move faster than feet, particularly when you're using passing footwork. So compared to, say, the Italian concept of tempo, what's a tempo? The time it takes to do a fencing action. And that means some tempos are faster than other tempos. So it's a pretty kind of amorphous concept, whereas Silver says, no, hands move really fast, body's a little bit slower, a foot movement is a little bit slower, both feet is slower still. And if you think about it in that way, it tells you what the limiting factor for every movement is. And
so could you translate what false means then in this context?
False means if you step into range of your opponent without having your weapon in front of you.
Okay.
If you put your foot before your hand, then that's a false time.
Okay, because just because this will be humorous for you, because my system is very much about deception. The way I took it to mean was that this is easy to read. That is as fast as you can go because it's the fastest part of your body. Whereas if you move feet first, don't trust it because then there's another part that's faster. So it's actually a false time and you read it wrong. So that was my complicated way of seeing the translation of that from the system that I came. I thought you'd be. No?
Yeah. So it's about safety. It's about making sure that if I'm here, if I step in to a range that you can hit me with your hand motion, that's really dangerous for me.
It's a great way to bait, though.
Well, it is. Then I'm relying on the fact that my hand might be slightly faster than your hand, and most of the time, both of us get hit. And if you get hit by one of these, you're not getting up again.
No, I'm sure.
So Silver, it's not. So there are weapons and systems. Like if I have a stick, okay, it's very hard for me to close the line against a counterattack. Okay, so extending my hands first, all it does is give the other person a target to hit. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't do me any good. So the true times don't really apply in that particular weapon. There's a manual called the Manual del Baratero, which is a Spanish gypsy knife fighting manual from the 19th century. And it explicitly says step and then stab, because if you extend your hand first, they will cut it off.
Cut it off,
Because it's
yeah.
a knife. It has no hilt. There's nothing you can't close the line to their weapon with your knife. So
Yeah.
there's no point. I've also read a Japanese staff fighting manual that says like little, I don't know what it's called, but sort of the 4 5 foot one.
Ciao.
Yeah, but it says exactly. It with a really good explanation. It says here is the problem: feet are slow, hands are fast. If you step in with your staff moving first, you're presenting a target and you're slowing down the power of your strike, and it's only a stick, so speed is important. So even though stepping and then striking opens you up to a stop hit, it's the best option you've got with this particular weapon. It was a really good explanation of the problem and saying, with this weapon system, this is what you've got to do for this reason. But with one of these, it's a different story. And even with a longsword, even with one of these, I can put that cross in the way to prevent a counterattack. So I extend first, protect myself, and then step.
So false in this sense means bad, like bad idea.
False definitely means bad in Silver's book, yes.
Okay, good. That's,
False teachers of defense are bad. And Italian mostly.
And Italian, yeah.
That's redundant.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the idea of false times and true times in the context of the 4 governors and how that connects it. And where it's interesting to me is that with regard to like sometimes in fighting in general, you can step in and be completely unprotected if you are picking the right moment. So if somebody watch somebody's eyes and at some point you can walk right into them and hit them, and you can actually respond to them and hit them.
Yeah, so Silver gives us a few examples of that, like this. He's got the whole gaining the place idea, where if somebody's not paying attention, you can step to the side to a position where they are unable to reach you and hit them really fast. Okay, that's an entirely reasonable thing to do. Doing it offensively is hard, it's tricky. Doing it defensively is a lot easier. So winning the place is much easier than gaining the place, but it's definitely a thing. And likewise, when he talks about falsing and redoubling, he says, if your opponent can strike from their ward, don't do it. It's really dangerous. However, if you meet somebody who can't or doesn't strike from their ward, in other words, they don't riposte, then falsing and redoubling is a safe thing to do. And that's kind of the same idea. And that's if talking about governors, that's judgment. You know, if somebody is lying in, say, this guard, and you move slightly that way, you can hit them and they can't, they've got to reach across their body to hit you. So you can be in distance and they can be out of distance. And in a position like that, you can step in and then hit them safe in the knowledge that they can't reach you because of the way they're lying with their weapon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the concept that kind of interfaces with this from my other training is the idea of finding voids. So instead of focusing on mechanical, technical, distance timing aspect, though that's there too, psychological component, and seeing.
I don't know if it's just us, but you're breaking up there, Mike.
Yeah, there's
breaking
kind of
up.
feedback.
I say it again.
Feedback loop.
We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
That's better.
So with the in my other training in the past, I probably was just yelling, and you couldn't hear me because of that. The idea is of to find the voids, both in the openness of a person's posture, but also in their mentality. So you watch them, and sleeping, that's a good time to go. And if you go then, you can just about hit him with a spoon.
Yeah, I don't think Silver would disagree, because he talks about, striking to the parts that are most open.
Yeah, and so I guess my question was about kind of looking at that idea within the context of the four governors, and you kind of answered that you think that judgment is talking about there.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the distance, time, and place thing is also about understanding that geometry, like that thing that we did earlier where you're standing in a wide stance and then hitting them while stepping back to a narrow stance, because of that extra reach that you get just by shifting the geometry. And there's a whole bunch of cool little geometry tricks that you can use where people will think they're safe and they won't be on their guard because they think, no, you can't reach me yet, and you can.
That reminds me of all those videos you sent me. I just want to mention it in passing. We can talk about it offline, but there's a really rich resource, Paul, of these little 10-second snippets of you doing things. And I would like to help you, if you haven't already done that, I'd like to figure out a way to make it available for people.
Yeah, I would be happy to work on that. That would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of.
I think I went and redid it. I went through them and redid a couple as well.
Yeah.
So, that's all pre-plague when the whole world fell apart.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're on my computer somewhere. Yes.
A question. This actually is something probably is Maya was bringing up things that make English martial arts distinctly English, and the idea there's false times, but the idea of falses. And one thing I know I've heard you mention that I've come across is it seems like the idea of falses and feints within English martial arts they're much more prominently mentioned than when I look at German sources or most of the early Italian sources. Though Monte again mentioned, Monte is wonderful. But anyway, we won't rave about him. But if you could expand on falses and the idea of falsing in this period and Silver, I think that'd be really helpful.
Okay. So they are really prominent in all British martial arts, really. There is a technical difference between the English false and the European feint, which is actually like if you get a classical fencer and you ask them what a feint is, they'll say, extend your foil at them when they parry, disengage, and hit them on the other side. Classic 1-2 feint. And if you extend your foil and they don't respond, what do? You hit them, you carry through. So the idea is that a feint can turn into a real attack at any point. And the English sources are explicit that that is not the case with falsing. A false attack is a pretend attack, and you do not move into distance on your pretend attack. You only move into distance on the real attack. And if they don't respond the way you think they're going to, you will probably abort or look foolish. But you don't continue through and hit them with the real attack because it was never meant to be a real attack. And it's actually a World War II British bayonet manual has a full description of this, saying there is a difference between falsing and feinting. So this was part of obviously traditional British martial arts that survived all the way up, this understanding that falses are not feints in the same way that you get in European fencing.
So they just like tests in a way, like you're just sort of
so
or something.
So Zachary Wilde says that before you deceive your opponent with false play, you prove them by true play. So in other words, I'll throw a cut one at you, which is a real attack, and you parry, and I get back out of distance, and I do it again, and I say, okay, I know how you're going to parry that, and you're expecting me to do it again. So now I go false, you parry, and then I do my real attack to the other side. So I set them up by doing a series of real attacks, priming them to do what I want them to do.
Right.
Then that's the way that it works. So you never open with a false because you don't know what they're going to do. You've got to make sure I know what you're going to do because you've done it 6 times and you've done it 6 times successfully. So you're going to do it again when I give you the same clue. But this time I've got my plan B. And that's different to how feints are supposed to work in classical painting. But I will also say, in real life, everybody does it the English way. They just do. Regardless of the theory, if you respond to their feint in a way that they weren't expecting, they don't carry through. They go, oh shit, that's wrong, you didn't do that before.
Are there any other sources that you are aware of from Europe that are similar in the focus of that silver has on principles?
Oh God. Swetnam, obviously. He's got a full list of principles. Page has a full list of principles at the back rather than the front. Looking through the continental stuff, not that I've looked through all of it, that doesn't seem to be the way they present it. The principles are there, but the principles come out sort of organically from doing the things. And occasionally there will be sort of some tactical advice, which you can take as a principle, like, you know, sort of the Lichtenauer thing of, you know, take the initiative and attack and keep attacking, because while they're defending, they aren't hitting you. Okay, so you could take that as a principle, but really it's more tactical advice. So in short, no, I'm not sure there is that are so explicit about here are the principles of the fight. I could be wrong about that. There could be things out there that I haven't read because I do kind of specialize in the British stuff, but that is my understanding. Like trying to get principles out of, say, Morozzo, it's just a whole bunch of progressions and it's just like, that doesn't help me really. It's, you know, like, great.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Tell me why.
I would argue
they're not elaborating on. No, they're not elaborating on much, but they are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're there, but they're just not explicit.
With the art,
Yeah, we were talking about priority, which has so many techniques, but very, very limited concepts.
I argue that the
concepts in theory are implied.
onto like judgment, distance, like the principles that over like that's my personal contention. So I see overlap between those things.
Yeah. Like I'm quite sure the principles are there in pretty well everything, because you keep seeing.
For me, I see them as just 2 cultural expressions of very similar things.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. There was a question about targets.
Yeah. So that was mine, right? So this was, he says that, I mean, sword and buckler is obviously better than a sword and target, right?
Yeah, obviously.
And particularly because a sword and target can only do close fight and variable fight.
Yes. Okay, let me go get
I assume it's because it's strapped on your arm.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if there's a little bit more clarification.
That game.
So Alex, while Paul's in the other room.
This is not big enough to be a Renaissance target, but
It's an I-33.
it will do. Okay, so yes, obviously bucklers are better because you get to extend them further. This just kind of sits there, particularly in the Italian Rotella stuff. It really just sits there. It doesn't do an awful lot at all. I kind of lose garden fight because if I do that, that's bad. I could kind of do that, but what's the point? The target's already doing that for me. Yeah. I could do open fight, but assuming the other guy's got a target as well, that's a really easy thing to basically cover everything with. So this is why I think he's just saying, no, if you've got a target, you're really just doing this. And if you look at Page's instructions, one on guard stance, that's it. That's your one and only on guard stance. Okay. Which makes it brilliant, makes perfect sense, and is remarkably similar to Swetnam's rapier and dagger.
Quickly, yeah, on the topic of, you mentioned and dagger, offhand dagger, are you talking ale for Silver's offhand dagger for backsword and dagger? Are you talking about usually a closed hilt alehouse dagger of like 18 to 24 inches? Are you talking about a complex hilt? Was digging around in like, a variety of armories looking for period English daggers and trying to puzzle that out, because
there's not much there.
My natural inclination is just put an alehouse dagger in my left and,
Okay, so
bucklers, but give me double weapons.
Silver and Swetnam both mention close-hilted daggers, and they both mention if you've got a close-hilted dagger, you can do this, and if you don't do it. Yeah. So obviously, people were using both. The alehouse daggers were around, and they're obviously better, but also recognise not everybody's got one.
What does it look like, out of interest? Sorry, I don't know what the nail
It's
house.
basically half a broadsword.
We can grab you one. We got one here.
Yeah, grab one. Grab one.
Maya, next time you're up, it warms your heart to think of this as a knife on a level that like
we're actually doing a cutlass. We're doing a cutlass course at the moment, and half the guys are just using their alehouse daggers as cutlasses.
It's so good.
So this was obviously not a daily carry eating implement. This was like the sword was broke and they carried as something shorter.
Yes. This is what you took to the pub if you were expecting to get in a knife fight.
And it's small, and so you need something smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so for enclosed spaces, but it's also entirely forte. There's no weakness to it, so it will block anything. You can stand there and just block a two-handed sword almost effortlessly with them.
I think they're good.
So the British didn't have things like the Filipinos. Most of their sword stuff comes from their daily carry. It's like, this is what I have because I'm cutting my coconuts or whatever, and so now I'm fighting with it because it's the thing I have on me all the time. So the British were much more like, I'm carrying weapons. These are weapons.
I am explicitly carrying weapons, and I'm using all the technology available to make them better.
Excellent. All right.
So, hurry up, guys! Get your dagger.
So, do you have any questions?
Well, I was just kind of carrying on with this dagger idea. So if it's literally like that, it's just straight. Mostly they're fighting very straight swords, right? Everything's straight.
Largely, there were curved swords in Silver's time. Even they called them Turkish blades, and they issued them to armies occasionally. You get 400 Turkish blades being sent to Ireland for the garrison. So they did have access to curved blades, but they preferred straight ones.
Because they're more kind of pokey, stabby, sort of hacky.
By and largely, they give you access to the thrust. I personally hate curved blades. I think they're ridiculous things.
I see. We opposite there. I love curved blades and recurved blades, and I dislike short, straight ones.
Did you find your dagger?
No, we need to track it down.
No, man.
I'll get mine. I will get mine. It's just outside.
You get yours.
After Andrew was so gushing about it.
Yeah, it's
basically like a tank with a blade on it.
It's just it's a broken broadsword.
That's what I figured. That's what they used them once they broke, and they just kind of like resharpened the tip and carried on.
Yeah, sharpen the point back again, and you're good.
Yeah, that's what I'd do.
It's
a joy.
There it is.
2 pounds of metal over.
Okay, so that's longer than I thought. That's a great.
18 inches. So it's most of a sword. It's just about a cutlass.
You were wandering around London going to the pub.
You would have one
of
these.
Carry them.
We know that because they tell us you had a sash around your waist and you had this shoved in the back of the sash like that. So it was also called a bum dagger. because it was carried on the front.
So you had to have kind of a turning radius then.
Yeah. But that was, I mean, the English rapiers were also ridiculously long, and the Queen, both Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth kept passing edicts about the maximum length of rapiers because they were so inconvenient. People would turn around and knock things over and poke each other. And they did occasionally enforce it. There's a great story about the French ambassador whose rapier was too long and the town guards were trying to snap the last 6 inches off it, and he was getting very upset.
On it.
A nobleman had to come and intervene.
So they would just draw that straight out to the side, left-handed?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got something that's is good enough to block any sword you like, but not so big that you can't use it in the confines of a pub. We hope to befriend a publican to the point that we can do an alehouse dagger video in context.
Excellent.
I'd like to just share that my first fencing teacher, when I was at school, this was about age 9 or something, we had fencing classes, and each class would end with an alehouse brawl. But actually, we would all stand around the walls of the space that we were in, and last man standing won.
That's good. Good fencing class. Yeah, so obviously that's a weapon in and of itself, as well as a great companion weapon to your sword. So
18 to 24. Okay. I mean, is there an upper limit for that dagger length, or like what, for
I think Swetnam says 2 feet. He says
Okay.
let your dagger be 2 feet at the least.
What, you need to go get your tool?
Well, you've got to draw it out, right? So that's going to be your limiting factor, is being able to draw it out.
Probably, yeah.
It's like you go in there with a friend and you grab his and they grab yours.
And then the sword would just be hanging off your hip, cross draw out.
Yeah. Yes. So where's my? I've got my baldric there. Too many swords on the floor. So if I am being right-handed, I will be right-handed. That would be carried like that. And then I would draw it out like that.
Not around the waist, around the shoulder.
Yeah. And if I had my dagger would be across my bum like that. So I could draw it out like that.
I love it.
Which do you think he'd draw first?
If I'm inside the dagger, I would say. I don't think I would necessarily carry my sword to the pub if I was. There's a whole series of kind of 16th century maps, which were just city maps of lots of European capitals and a few in Turkey and that kind of thing. And they have little pictures of the locals in the corners in the local costumes. And throughout the European cities, occasionally you might see a gentleman wearing a rapier. Mostly they're unarmed, but occasionally you might see somebody with a rapier. All the English cities, you have everybody carrying weapons, and the gentlemen are walking around and they've got servants with these enormous bucklers on their backs following them behind with the buckler. And it's...
That's
All right.
brilliant. That's really funny.
Well, are there any more questions?
I mean, I've got plenty, but we've only got 5 minutes.
You've only got 5 minutes, exactly.
Go with what you got there, Maya.
Well, I mean, I just sort of mostly curious, like I said, about the mindset, like learning about the English mindset was already fighty. I mean, when you talk about the tactics being foremost in the English stuff, and then if you look at the continent and everything being done with technique and sort of learning it by osmosis, was it sort of assumed that the British were already kind of fighty? And so the tactical book was really like, okay, here's how to do it smarter and die less often, as Mark Denny would say, and then the foreigners would like maybe thought to have not that many skills, and so they had to be taught up from the bottom.
I think it's largely a class thing, in that the foreigners were, if they were carrying swords, they were aristocrats. So they were properly trained by fencing masters, or they were professional soldiers who were properly trained by, sergeants at arms or whatever.
And that's why there's more drills, so that you could run a class and have these people do drills over and over. Do you think that's why it's that way?
I don't know enough about the way they ran the lessons. I don't think anybody does. But even within, say, northern Italy, the sources that we have argue about it. So there's one guy who says you should only ever practice with sharp swords. And there are other people who say, no, that's ridiculous. It's dangerous. You've got to practice with blunt swords. We do know that the English, and Silver specifically, wants you to train at realistic speeds and power. Because he says the problem with rapier is they practice with gentle play. And it's true. And what they do is true in gentle play, but false in rough play. In other words, if you speed up and go faster and harder, then all the technique falls apart. It only works if you're going slowly and carefully. But whether that's representative of all Italian fencing of the period, we don't know. But we do know that Silver wants you to play hard and fast.
Go for it. Can I ask us one last?
Yeah.
Why is it called the ancient art of defense? And does he ever reference why they call it the ancient art of defense?
He doesn't, but I think it's fairly obvious that he's not claiming to have invented anything. Okay. He's teaching what he was taught by his father or grandfather or the family master at arms or whatever. So I think he's saying that this is the old knightly system that we have inherited. This is, and this is what we should stick to. And I reckon it goes back to at least the 1400s, because once you get like the Wakefield hilt swords, that's all you need to do silver. Having that sort of knuckle bow over the hand, suddenly it's just like you can now do everything you need to do with silver quite safely. So I think he's right in that it is a medieval system, slightly adapted to having a bit more hand protection once hand protection became a thing.
Okay.
But yeah, Silver never says it's his system. He never said I invented this. He says this is the ancient art, and this is what we should be doing because this is what Englishmen have always done, and this is what won us all the wars.
And in context of Salviolo just coming out a few years before saying, "Hey, I got this rapier thing, and isn't it great?"
Yeah.
It's like no, that's bullshit. You're gonna die doing that.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Paul, a technical question on the staff and plate stuff. He said, thinking about transition and things one can learn from transition from those longer weapons, back to backsword, and in general, the use of those longer weapons. He mentions being able to thrust both single and double with pike and with a short staff. So do you think he's pool cueing hitting the lead hand or doing a rear hand thrust with there? What do you play with both?
I think you do both in different contexts. Yeah, absolutely. And you can certainly do the same thing with the two-handed sword. Like Ledel is full of single-handed blows with the left hand only or the right hand only with the long sword.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. Yeah. So, and there's the longsword material also has, what were they called? I'm trying to think of the terminology, but they basically got thrust singles. Can't remember the word, but basically he's got a long one and a short one. And the short one is the front hand and the long one is the rear hand. Okay. So they're doing both. It's like close enough, bang, that's right, or a little further away, rear hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, of course, you've got the overhand thrust single with the staff as well, using the butt.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh.
Yes.
Anything else?
Sorry. We might on a minute or two.
Go for it.
Is there, so all the other like, manuscripts from this like little roll and all that kind of stuff of being just.
Yeah.
And it's all got the, foins and round and blah, 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 quarter rounds and blah, all the
Yeah.
ways. And silver doesn't use any of that. And whereas, I mean, even Saviolo mentions foins. Is there?
Yes.
Think of a reason why he was like, he just didn't use any of that terminology?
Possibly because he didn't want to confuse his audience with too much technical terms. But Leddell's kind of like, so Harleyan has hawks and rabbits.
Yep.
Leddell has downright blows and rabbits. And then silver just has downright blows. So there's some terminological similarity, and some things evolved and some things stayed the same. Swetnam has foins. Swetnam's has full, half, and quarter blows, the same way that that Leddell does. So if you look at sort of the 16th century stuff in a whole, plus the earlier stuff, you actually say, there's quite a few terms there that have survived from the earlier stuff. And some they've just adopted new words for, or it was a regional thing and they always called it that. Yeah.
Another technical question that actually gets in. There's the downright blow piece. Where do you see? What do you see? Do you see any role, or what role do you see for rising shots in silver? Monte is enamored of them, but then mentions, well, that's when you're in armor, and otherwise just hit downright shots, which is kind of one of those like, okay,
yeah. I think it's because of the grip. Is that if all I've got is a single-handed, angle that up a bit, with a single-handed hammer blow, trying to come up that way is dodgy because it'll get busted out of your hand.
Yeah.
Two hands, much more sensible.
Yeah.
Finger over the cross, like a side sword, or a thumb ring, or some other second point of leverage, then it's perfectly sensible. But with a single-handed hammer grip, the rising blows with a false edge are a bit dodgy. They're dangerous. Rising blows with the true edge, a lot more sensible, but also a lot less powerful. So, and if I'm here or here, and why would I do that when I can stab you?
Yeah.
That is a lot more sensible. The one that we do find is useful in silver is the number 3, because it's a nice way of getting up under guardant and hitting people in the arm. Our mate Josh, who moved to Seattle to be with his girl, I don't know if you probably met him.
Scheduled for us, unfortunately.
Yes, but he's an absolute master of the number 3 from open fight. He'll start an attack from open fight, and you'll be in garden, and you'll close in to try and do it, and suddenly his sword goes whoop and takes out your wrist, and it's extremely annoying. But yeah, I think they're not there because they're not nearly as powerful if you're doing them with the true edge, and a dangerous thing to do if you're doing it with the false edge.
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna have to pile out, but I just wanted to thank Mike and Paul for organizing this. I was a little skeptical of a Zoom martial arts seminar, but this was actually lovely. Thank you.
It worked.
I'm glad I told them about it.
Hey.
Yeah.
Like I said, big fan.
Yeah, this
I
was
jumped on
awesome.
This opportunity to be able to talk and hear from you. Thank you very much, Paul.
Pleasure to meet you, and nice to see you again, Eric.
Yeah, nice to see you.
And hopefully we'll see you in person at some time in the near future.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make it out there. Peace.
Thank you so much. So we should probably call it to a close. Thanks, guys, for participating. I think that this proves this approach, combining some physical practice with discussion, is kind of a neat way to go. It gets us all off our asses in this time of COVID. So
yes.
So if we do this again, maybe we can do it in a in a way that encourages your students to participate, and we could do it more online, live, and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, Sunday mornings are a bit of a difficult time for us to get a space because we mostly use church halls, and they'll all be in use on a Sunday morning. But if we can find a space, we can definitely do it.
it'd be fun to see that.
Whatever time of day you're doing it, we have access to our place.
Yeah.
You know what time of the night it might be, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Paul, will you send me a link for people to get in touch with you regarding your PDF of your book?
Yes, I will do that. I will
And if
look
you're,
up.
and I'll talk to you about those videos. I'd with people. So,
Okay, cool.
all right,
Well,
all right.
Signing off. Thanks very much, Mike. That was awesome.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
It's now lunchtime. I can have a beer.
All right. We already had ours. So.
Yeah, I figured. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to see you, Maya.